What really happened to Jean-Luc Picard during the Romulan evacuation mission? If you've been wondering about this, then this new book is one for you. Hey everyone, my name is Captain Jack and welcome to Trek Central. The new Star Trek Picard tie-in novel, The Last Best Hope by Una McCormack, just released on the 11th of February. It details exactly what happened to Picard during the Romulan evacuation mission and the changes it caused to the Federation. Not only that, but also some neat details for other areas of the Star Trek universe. If you've not read this book, there will be spoilers for it as well as some for Star Trek Picard, so you have been warned. As a bonus, we have got a free Audible trial available to you all. Stick around till the end of this video to learn more. Alright, let's warp in. The year is 2381. Captain Picard is still in command of the USS Enterprise E. His first officer by now is Commander Worf. Still on board the Enterprise is also Dr. Beverly Crusher and Chief Engineer Geordi LaForge. Picard is summoned to Starfleet HQ for a meeting with the current Commander-in-Chief, Admiral Victor Bordson. It is stated that Bordson is a veteran of some of the grimmer arenas of the Dominion War. Captain Kirsten Clancy is also present at this meeting, the person who becomes the CNC of Starfleet by 2399, and also has a rather interesting interaction with Jean-Luc. The briefing is on the Romulan star that is expected to go supernova in the year of 2387, however the changes that are happening to the star are starting to affect the surrounding planets with roughly 10 light years. The briefing shown is done by Lieutenant Commander Raffi Musica, and Picard takes a liking to her straightforwardness, which is an uncommon trait for most intelligence officers. The Romulans have requested the help of the Federation, and Picard takes up the role, being given the rank of Admiral. However, as this is such a large undertaking, he will need ships, but Starfleet does not have too many to take away from other projects. Jean-Luc is also asked to step down as the captain of the Enterprise E, as Starfleet does not think it is wise for the relief effort to be headed by the Federation flagship, as it could look more like an invasion force. The captaincy of the Enterprise is therefore given to Commander Worf, who has been Picard's executive officer since 2379. We've actually done a bit of a detailed video on Captain Worf, so feel free to check that out via the link down below. Definitely worth a watch. It's also quite a symbolic promotion for Worf, as it shows how far Klingon and Federation relations have gone since Praxis, and now the Romulans dealing with their own Praxis incident, it could be a nice symbol to them as well. So far, Admiral Picard managed to gather 14 ships for his effort, with the flagship being the USS Verity, an Odyssey-class starship which originates from the game Star Trek Online. Picard also gets Lieutenant Commander Raffi Musica as his first officer. Raffi, however, has to leave her husband and son in order to undergo this mission. Now, Geordi LaForge does help out in his own way. He leaves the Enterprise and heads up the efforts at Utopia Planitia to make sure all the ships that Picard might need to help save the Romulan people are ready on time. There are 900 million Romulan refugees, it's a big number, and the Romulans haven't even told Starfleet what they themselves are doing to help their own people. You know, in typical Romulan fashion. Geordi does have to convince the engineers of Utopia Planitia to give up on their own research projects and help him create as many ships as they can. However, very early on they do hit a bottleneck. Particular components within a starship cannot be replicated or manufactured. They have to be individually constructed by trained specialists. One engineer, Mackenzie, has an idea. This is to ask the Daystrom Institute to create androids. However, instead of using positronic brains, which has not been successfully replicated from the Soon-type androids, instead they use bioneural circuitry, the same type of circuitry that the USS Voyager ran on. This means that Geordi has to convince Dr. Bruce Maddox, the Federation's leading expert on synthetics, to give up his own research for at least a decade to assist with the efforts to create bioneural androids. No small feat of engineering or research. However, Maddox meets a young Dr. Agnes Girardi who is in his class. They start to develop a relationship and she convinces Maddox to help Geordi and create the required androids. Now after a while, Dr. Maddox does manage to create the first A500 android, but doesn't like this and that is probably what he'd be remembered for. Another plot thread throughout the book is of Dr. Amal Safadi, an astronomer who uses their own data realizing that the effect of the Romulan supernova is actually more deadly than before, and that the range of effect would be much larger than originally anticipated. It doesn't just follow this Federation astronomer, but also Dr. Norcrum Veritas of Romulus, who also realizes this fact. But you see how very different this information is treated in the Federation compared to that of the Romulan Star Empire. Again, we're treating back to that value of the Romulans shrouding themselves in secrecy and not being too accompanying to the Federation. An interesting note is that the Doctor claims that the speed of which the Romulan star is changing is unnatural. This could hint at further story points about the Romulan star, which I could find very interesting. During the years of the relief mission, Picard and his fleet of ships helped to evacuate many worlds, but obviously some of them did not go as planned. On some planets, Picard relocates Romulan refugees to camps on Romulan-controlled worlds, expecting infrastructure and housing, but the Empire stretched so thin and would not accept the Federation overextending its help. The Admiral also makes a brash move to actually relocate some colonists across the Romulan neutral zone, essentially breaking down the neutral zone, which has stood for almost 220 years, and ensuring reasonable peace between the Federation and the Romulan Star Empire. This is obviously the end of an era. Neither the Federation or the Star Empire is obviously happy with this, as neither were consulted on this, but the relocated Romulans are. Now this move did not only affect the Federation as a whole, but also some of its member worlds. Those who lie on the border of Romulus did not like the idea of taking on Romulan colonists, or even the massive amount of resources being given to the relocation effort, and not to small worlds like them. A small councillor called Olivia Quest starts up the scrutiny committee of the Romulan relocation effort. She is also approached by other smaller member worlds of the Federation who are considering to succeed over the lack of resources being given to them, and how little impact they have on the Federation proceedings compared to the founding members. Around 14 member worlds are threatening to leave the Federation over these issues. This almost ties in with what Admiral Clancy said in episode 2 of Star Trek Picard. The relocation of the Romulans to the colony world of Vashti is a very successful effort for the relocation mission. Picard is actually assisted by the Quat Malat, a sect of Romulan warrior nuns, who are enemies of the Tal Shiar. Picard does become quite close with a young boy of the Quat Malat after looking after them, called Elnor. Picard reads Elnor, the Little Prince, a French novel which Picard himself loved to be read when he was a small boy. Elnor actually makes his first appearance in the Star Trek Picard series in episode 4, Absolute Candor. However, as one colony becomes a success, another becomes a failure. Picard makes his way to Nimbus 3, which since the last time we saw it in the Final Frontier has actually fallen under Romulan jurisdiction, despite it originally being a planet which the Federation, the Klingon Empire, and the Romulan Star Empire all put its resources into. You can see Nimbus 3 in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Now of course the Tal Shiar do get their hands involved in some of the proceedings, saying they'll handle the evacuation of Nimbus. Raffi proposed that this could be due to a possible secret Tal Shiar base on Romulus. This is actually seen in the game Star Trek Online. Picard and the rest leave the planet hoping that Tal Shiar are actually going to help relocate the colonists, but only after they massacre many people on the surface for resisting relocation. This gets recorded and distributed and shows the horror that the relief mission simply let happen. After these events led straight up to the year of 2385, we see Ambassador Spock actually contacting Picard. He has actually managed to leave the planet of Romulus with a handful of members of a Romulan reunification effort. However, he tells Picard there are still many left on Romulus. Not only have there been failings on a large scale, there have also been failings on a small scale. Raffi has essentially abandoned her husband and son, and after 4 years of being separated from them, they have decided to move on with their life. This starts to make her actions in episode 3 of Picard start to make a bit more sense. She gave up so much to help Picard's mission. Picard does return to Vashti in a scene which is actually seen at the beginning of Picard episode 4, Absolute Candor. Picard returns to the Quat Malat and gifts Elnor with the Three Musketeers. However, while there, Picard does receive the news that the A500 androids have attacked Mars. Now interestingly enough, Picard's first question as he returns with Verity is, has anyone heard from LaForge? We do get absolute confirmation of LaForge, however, did survive the attack on Mars, but was on a transport shuttle while it was happening. He witnesses the whole Martian atmosphere going up and wonders why he would be spared, whereas all the people he has worked with for the last 4 years have died in the attack. Geordi meets with Dr. Maddox at the Dacianum Institute and asks what went wrong with the androids. Geordi gets Maddox to admit that he was not focused on the A500s and was developed his theory of fractal neuronic cloning. Admiral Jean-Luc Picard is immediately recalled back to Earth to attend a meeting with Starfleet Command. This again is the very same meeting we see Picard come out of in the beginning of episode 3, The End is the Beginning. Raffi preps them with inventories of mothballed ships and reserve duty rosters, and as we know, this meeting doesn't exactly go as planned. Picard does presume that it's still on, but it was cancelled and simps have now been banned across the Federation. As we do see, in one last-ditch effort, Picard asks them to either accept his revised plan or his resignation, and Starfleet Command do accept his resignation. And the aftermath ensues. Bruce Maddox walks away from everything, Picard starts to daunt himself and retires to a chateau to write books about great men and worry about the spittlebugs on the Pinos. The Romulan Star Empire collapses and Admiral Victor Borson retires. Therefore, Admiral Clancy becomes the new Starfleet CNC. A great analogy is Picard is Icarus. He flew too close to the sun and overextended himself, and found himself burnt. Now that is our breakdown of the book, The Last Best Hope by Una McCormack. And now, what do we actually think of this book? So let's jump into our quick review. As with every Una McCormack book, she does characters extremely well and faithful. In this book, every single character was detailed and had their own quirks about them which remain faithful to who they are. Not on their own, but their dynamics between different characters was also excellent. A good example of this would be Geordi and Maddox and how they interacted in the book. Obviously Geordi does not particularly like Maddox, as Maddox originally wanted to scrap Data, Geordi's good friend. But Geordi admires that Data forgave Maddox, something which he doesn't believe he could have done if he was in Data's shoes. But he decides to give Maddox faith as is what Data would have wanted. And this goes into another point I loved about this book, that the conflicts and drama came from multiple places and not just from a relocation effort. You have the conflict between Geordi and Maddox, Picard and Clancy, and many other places which make this book a joy to read. Even though Star Trek books are essentially extended canon to the events we see on screen, this book is a tie into Picard, and it's probably the closest we might get to book events being canon on screen. I am sure other Star Trek books have done this, but the look this book gives to the intricacies of politics within the Federation was another thing which I thoroughly enjoyed about the novel. We usually see the Federation from the perspective of Starfleet or one of the founding members, Earth, Andoria, Teller, Vulcan. But this book shed light on the smaller member worlds of the Federation, and how they feel about particular decisions. As Clancy says in the Picard series, 14 member worlds are threatening to leave the Federation, and this book shows us why and is understandable. These smaller member worlds do not feel like they have a voice within the Federation, and that resources could have been given to them are now being given to their enemies. And it's these details scattered throughout the book which make it just such a joy. I'd also like to note that there are some smaller things as the astronomer storyline with the novel I very much enjoyed. It seemed to me that a lot of Una's books were there's some plot threads around academics, which is quite nice to see. And even though it wouldn't be an Una book without academics, it certainly wouldn't be an Una book without a Cardassian reference, to which there are many. Comparing how the Federation assisted Cardassia Prime after the Dominion War, and how it plans to help the Romulan people was done very well, and cements in canon that the Federation helped to rebuild Cardassia Prime. Okay, now obviously this book isn't a perfect book, as a perfect book doesn't really exist, so there were a couple of parts of this book we personally did not enjoy. After meeting Jurati in episode 1 of Starship Picard, I at least got the feeling that she was a student of Maddox and that was it. However, this book made it into a relationship between Maddox and Jurati. Now this makes sense with kind of what she was saying in episode 1, but I did not like these scenes that much. If we meet Maddox in the show, it'll be interesting to see how their relationship is shown and what it might change my opinion on this factor. Compared to other Star Trek novels, I feel like this one links to previous episodes and events less. That isn't to say that it doesn't refer to previous Trek, as it absolutely does, but not as much as other Trek books. I can't quite understand why, maybe it just doesn't feel the need to, as it is more cemented in what it compared to other books, but I did find this point particularly interesting. And in regards to some of the actual story, I thoroughly enjoyed a lot of the story, but some missions that Picard undertakes during a relocation effort seem slightly inconsequential to the grand narrative of a relocation mission. These missions still do work for the book, such as showing the situation in certain worlds or shaping certain characters' views. As Picard goes to so many worlds relocating people, some of the worlds just get lost in the story. It was also interesting that we do get a brief mention of Spock. I was expecting in the dialogue to hear about Spock's last-ditch effort to save the Romulan people using a red matter, like we do see in Star Trek 2009, but hey, we didn't actually get that reference. Hopefully there'll be a little more confirmation around that at a later date, but we'll have to wait and see. And that was the Star Trek Picard novel The Last Best Hope by Una McCormack. As said, I massively enjoyed this book and would recommend it to anyone who is enjoying the new series. It really helped flesh out the backstory of the show, yet just gives us details and isn't essential to understanding the show itself. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can get access to Star Trek Picard The Last Best Hope for our free Audible trial. Simply click the link in the video description below for a free trial of the audiobook service and let us know what you think of the book. If you want to keep up to date on all things Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to subscribe to Trek Central here on YouTube. You can also follow us on social media for daily updates, visit our website or even join our brand new community Discord server. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thank you for watching and of course we'll see you next time.